Hello, excuse my appearance. I've been doing some tree surgery today, so I thought I would sit down and have a listen to these Kingstons now I've done the crossovers. And what I can say, I left them running, so it is now 20 past 3. They've been running for 20 hours, just quietly in the background, letting the capacitors burn in, although some people say they don't require any. Certainly a practice for me is whenever I've taken a loudspeaker apart, done anything to it, I always feel they need a bit of a settling in period. Even if you've just moved it, if you're doing an A-B comparison, let alone taking a speaker completely apart. So they've had 20-ish hours running in. I've got them sitting side by side, my original pair, and I can switch between the two. And the first thing I've noticed is just the sheer level of detail that's apparent in the ones I've worked on. And I never thought my pair sounded bad. They don't. But I've got to say, this is an example of where taking the time to completely strip and rebuild the crossovers with significantly better parts. I didn't do anything to the inductors. A lot of people have suggested I should do the bass inductor. I have done that on those, but there's a lot more space in the cabinets for bigger inductors, and the diameter of the millihenry value inductor for the Kingstons would make it large, and I just felt it was reducing internal volume. The foam wouldn't fit in properly, so I just didn't want to do that. Anyway, new resistors, new caps. I spent a fair bit of time trying different capacitors of the same value in another crossover, checking how they sounded. So I used my white SL6S for voicing of certain values of caps to choose for them. And on the basis of that, that was why I chose the caps I did for the Kingstons. So stripped, completely rebuilt, put them all back together again, left them running for 20 hours and had a listen. So if I start from the top down, HF isn't any louder or any quieter. That was something that was of a concern, because sometimes changing capacitors alters, well, they'll have different ESR values that could alter the leveling of a particular frequency or at particular frequencies. So something I was mildly concerned with was, am I going to have elevated or reduced levels of HF? No, that has remained consistent. Mid-range characteristics have remained consistent. Bass characteristics, I haven't got more bass, but I've certainly got a better bass. So if we start from the top down, HF is so open and clean and really giving me a lot of space around the instruments that just isn't quite there with my other pair. Moving down to the mid-range, I would want to be a bit careful with any of the SL series that I don't think they work favourably with Ford sounding equipment. So some of the earlier name equipment, which is slightly more aggressive in the mid-range, does sound very Ford in the mid-range. My Meridian amplifier is not really like that. So mid-range, although it is fairly Ford projected like most of the SL series are, it's very, very smooth, very, very open, and being a cabinet of little to no coloration, it's just completely devoid of colour. And it's very, very clear, very clear. One of my friends, unfortunately, who's long past now, I played him a pair of speakers some years ago, and he said, "Oh my God, you can hear her teeth." And that comment has always stuck with me, because with this, you're hearing breath, you're hearing teeth, you're hearing enunciation in the mid-range, which is very, very, very good. The level of clarity is certainly improved in the mid-band. Moving down to the bass, now, like I said, I haven't got more bass, not really, not more bass, but it's a better quality of bass. And I've always described this as the difference between hearing a bass note and hearing a plucked bass note. you're hearing the plucking and then the releasing of the note, as where on some speakers you just hear the release of the note. So you just hear more of a thud, more of a sort of thump, rather than hearing the actual texture and layer of the bass tones. And that's what's improved on these. So overall, I'm really pleased with how they've turned out. They sound very much like Kingston's, as they should, but the level of clarity and detail has improved. The spatial cues around instruments has improved, and the level of clarity in the bass has improved. Imaging's much the same as it always was. They image incredibly well, but one thing, and I don't know why this has happened, but it could be something to do with the spatial cues or just the level of detail that I'm hearing now. These do have a slightly better depth of soundstage, that it is presenting quieter things further back, or you're allowed access to quieter things that you couldn't hear quite so well on my Kingstons. So it's just giving you slightly deeper soundstage. So I'm really pleased with that. One thing it has led to is I'm definitely going to have to do the other pair, because there's a significant improvement in sonic capability on the pair I've just worked on versus mine. So what I'd attempted to do was bring this second pair up to my level, because my pair did sound better. But what I've actually managed to do is surpass that, and now I just want to bring that so they both sound the same. Other news, my white SLs, I did put a post the other day saying I was happy with the crossover work that I'd done on those. I am going to revise that one more time. After comparing these to my white SLs, I think the white SLs were a little bit too much in the HF. So I'm going to add a slightly higher value resistor, half an ohm, 1 ohm maybe. I'll experiment with that and just see if I can reduce that HF leveling just a little bit. It does mean, unfortunately, buying another rather expensive resistor, but it was worth it. Anyway, that's the update. Thanks for liking the posts, the pictures, so on and so forth, and thanks to everybody who posts on the Celestion page. I think it's very good that this sort of brand of loudspeakers is still getting the recognition that it deserved. Anyway, take care. I'll catch up with you soon.